Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I'm a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything without the fluff. So if you guys like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it, and just stick around. Also, if you need any help with your specific situation, I offer one-on-one coaching, email coaching, small group coaching, as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's dive into today's video. In today's video, I would like to discuss a principle or a law, if you prefer, that can actually help you break through all of your barriers, all of your blockages when you're manifesting. If you understand what it is, what it says, and how it can apply to conscious manifesting, I think you can actually see things from a very different perspective. And this is the law or the principle of polarity. I'm going to discuss that in a second and explain to you guys what it is and how it applies in manifesting. And it's actually something that is not talked about very much, so I'm really excited to talk about this today. So stay tuned. So the principle of polarity, or the law of polarity, is actually the fourth Hermetic principle. There are 7 Hermetic principles. This one is the 4th one. And what it refers to is, essentially, it tells us that polarity and duality, even though it seemingly exists, it does not actually exist. It tells us that there aren't actually any opposites. There isn't actually any opposition or any duality in things, in experiences, in how we label things and how we perceive them. So let's explain that a little further. Let me give a few examples to make it clear. So what this principle says, what this law says is, for example, let's take temperature. You have hot on one end and you have cold on the other end. These are the two seemingly opposite poles. These are the two seeming opposites, hot and cold. So what this law says, what this principle says, is that cold essentially doesn't exist because hot and cold are the same thing. They're both temperatures. They're the same essence, the same substance. The only thing that they have different is the degree. So essentially cold doesn't exist because all it is the absence of hot. Now, the relationship between the two is actually quite relative. So there isn't a point where you actually change from hot to cold and you can actually pinpoint that, oh, this is exactly where the change occurs. It's very relative. It's essentially a spectrum. So you go from the extreme end of the spectrum, the extreme hot, to the other extreme end of the same spectrum, which is the extreme cold. And this actually applies to everything else as well. So for example, light and dark. They're on the same spectrum, and dark is the other end of light. But they're on the same spectrum. The only thing that makes them different is the degree. So dark is essentially the absence of light. It also applies to things like love and hate. You have love on one end of the spectrum, and you have hate on the other end of the spectrum. So hate is essentially still on the same spectrum as love, and essentially it's the absence of love, but it is not something different from love. They're both the same essence, the same substance, and just they vary in degrees. So hot and cold, light and dark, love, hate, it applies to every seemingly opposing pair. So this is the 4th Hermetic principle, the principle of polarity, which essentially tells us that in essence and in reality, there are no opposites. Everything is the same. Hot and cold are the same thing. They just vary in temperature because they're both temperature. Love and hate are the same thing. They are feelings. They just vary in degree. Hate is also a degree of love. And light and dark, to use the examples that I just gave, dark is on the same spectrum as light. They're the same thing. They are brightness, or however you want to call it. And then all dark is light, just to a different degree. How does understanding this principle help us overcome these blocks, overcome these ideas, overcome these limiting beliefs? Let's say you're manifesting a specific person, and let's say that person has told you that they hate you, that they don't love you, they don't like you, okay? By knowing and understanding that 4th Hermetic principle of polarity, you realize that this can actually not be true. That there is no real hate. Hate doesn't even exist, because hate is actually the same thing as love. It's still on the spectrum of love, it's just a different degree of love. Yes, it might be on the other end, on the extreme end, but they're still on the same spectrum and they're still the same thing. So if a person has told you that they hate you, or if you think to yourself that they hate you, because a lot of the time it's our own perceptions, it's not what others say or do, it's the stories we attach to what they say or do. So if you feel that they hate you for whatever reason, realize that it's actually the opposite sides of the same coin. So they cannot possibly hate you, because hate doesn't exist. Hate is in the same spectrum as love. Hate is already a part of love, and hate is just a different degree of love. So how do you apply that in practice, in your everyday life, in your manifesting life, and your manifesting practice? You go within and you practice being in the state where your person actually loves you, where you feel loved, you feel wanted, you feel cherished, you feel adored, and you feel all these different degrees of love. You realize that hate is just another degree of love and nothing more than that. It doesn't really exist. And knowing that, you actually focus on love. You focus on the state you love, you focus on the assumptions, the beliefs, the energies that actually make you feel loved. And by doing this, and by knowing that hate and love are actually not opposites, they're actually the same thing in just different degrees, you actually focus on the desired degrees of love. And essentially, you first shift your own perceptions of how that person feels about you, how you feel about that person, how you feel in relation to that person and about your relationship. And that's how you know that since hate and love are actually on the same spectrum, you can very easily, by focusing your energies on love and on the things that you love, the things that you want to experience, the feeling of being loved, you are actually bringing your person over here on the spectrum towards love. You are transmuting and you are transforming whatever negative feelings that you have projected on them towards this side of the spectrum, towards the side of love. Same thing with every other blockage you might have with your specific person or with your desire in general about circumstances, about things that you're trying to manifest, things that you're working on. If they feel difficult, if you feel stuck in the circumstances, you can apply this principle to all of these things, and you will see how easily your blocks can get dissolved. For example, if you're manifesting money and you're noticing that the money isn't here right now, you do that mental exercise with a spectrum. You remember the law of polarity, and you tell yourself, this is where money is and this is where no money is. They're both money, both in the same spectrum. It's just different degrees of the same thing. So I'm going to start imagining that I have money, how it feels to have money, how it feels to have abundance. And that moves myself, that moves my consciousness towards that side of the spectrum, the money side. And the more I do it, the more I focus on it, the more I push it out into the 3D, and the more I actually move towards this spectrum, because no money actually doesn't truly exist. It's actually in the same spectrum as money. Contact and no contact with your specific person. Again, same spectrum, same thing. This is the no contact, this is the contact. So by focusing on the contact, by focusing on the feelings that having contact with your specific person would induce, by focusing on these energies, focusing on these assumptions, focusing your attention to your desired reality, you basically move the spectrum towards here, towards the contact, towards the desired result, the desired outcome. Commitment and no commitment, same thing, same spectrum. You focus your energies, you focus your attention, you focus your assumptions and your imaginal acts on what you want, which is the commitment. And that makes the non-commitment non-reality, because it truly isn't a reality. They're the same thing in the same spectrum, just different degrees of the same thing. So you move towards here, where you have the commitment, you have what you want. And so on and so forth. You can practice that with absolutely everything. You can overcome any manifesting block in this way. Wherever you perceive lack of something, a person, an object, a situation, a circumstance, a state, you remember the law of polarity, and you remember that absence isn't actually really there. Absence doesn't really exist. Absence of whatever it is that you want. It already exists. It has always existed. It's just the other end of the spectrum of what you actually want. So you start moving in imagination towards your desired end of the spectrum. And that's how you overcome every block. That's how you overcome every feeling of lack, every perception of lack, every perception of, oh, the circumstances are showing me the opposites. You realize that the opposites are truly, in reality, the same thing. Just in different degrees, but they are the same thing. They are on the same spectrum. So with all this being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.